So can you talk about the strategy real quick of getting celebrities into Scientology? Was that
sure.
Did that start with Hubbard, or did that start with Miscavige? And talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a separate thing.
Is that something you were going to get to later, or?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. We can talk about it now. Then we'll get back to the timeline, because there's a little bit more about Miscavige I would like to talk about that's happened since 93. But this is a great question, and it's perfectly valid, because it's a key way that Scientology has kept going. In the 1950s, L. Ron Hubbard recognized the power of celebrity. And he actually wrote an issue suggesting that various celebrities be specifically targeted to be made into Dianetic, Scientologists. That was the first inkling of it. But over the years, I think in 1968 or 69 or so, a woman named Yvonne Gensch, or Yvonne Gillum, was a Sea Org member. She was an Australian Sea Org member who had come up and been part of, joined Hubbard's Sea organization early on. And she was this really bright light bulb of a personality. She could light up a room. Everybody loved her. I mean, literally, everybody loved her. To this day, people sing her praises. Yvonne is just this magical person that somehow got involved in Scientology. And despite all of its awfulness, she continued to remain this very bright bulb and very inspiring character in the Scientology history. She had the idea of taking this thing about celebrities and running with it. And she actually got herself out to Hollywood and started an organization called Celebrity Center. And she took Hubbard's ideas and policies and ideas about, how to run Scientology, and she applied it to this artistic community. And in 1969, there was a public for that. I mean, huge public for that. And she built on the whole movement of, the counterculture movement, artist movement, all this kind of stuff. She brought all that in, and she started it from scratch, really. She went out there on this mission to start Celebrity Center, and she just kind of ran with it. And she started bringing in low-level celebrities, actors, singers, poets. They did poetry night readings and song nights and things like that. And it appealed to people. They came in and they started doing Scientology services. And it was scrape. It was bare, it was just like barely surviving to start with, but it started building up. And then she started getting more, higher level. Like, I think she got some guy who'd been on a couple TV shows in, and some singers in, and some other people of note. And slowly this thing built up. And Celebrity Center is now a network of organizations throughout the Scientology world, operating out of this building that they bought, this old Chateau Hotel in Hollywood, which they renovated in the 90s at great expense. And they cater specifically and only to celebrities or their entourages.
So tell us again her name.
What's that?
Her name again?
Yvonne Gillum.
Yvonne Gillum. She starts what year?
68, 69, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Wow, that's so profound.
Yeah, she was, like I said, every single person I have ever met, and I've talked to quite a few, who ever had anything to do with her, just has nothing but good things to say about her. She was just the nicest, kindest, most helpful person. She really cared about people. And it was on the strength of that she built up Celebrity Center, and she was able to get the trust and loyalty of celebrities. And she gathered them around her, and she wasn't in it for her. She really believed in the whole mission of Scientology, to the point that she did some pretty awful stuff. I mean, she ended up basically abandoning her kids for this whole thing. So she was a pretty shitty mother, but she was, this great Scientologist. And she ended up dying, I think, of cancer in the 80s. And they kind of erased her names from the books because, you're either Hubbard or you're Miscavige. And if you're anybody else, you can't have a name. And that's kind of the history of Scientology as far as that goes. But at the time that she was around and building this whole thing up and running it, she was a goddess. She was really a queen. And she built this thing up. They got John Travolta involved in the mid 70s, he got into Scientology through, and I think that's, he got Welcome Back Kotter around then, and then Grease, of course, and, everything after that. And he attributed his success to Scientology, and this became a big thing. And they really started getting the return on investment that you can get from celebrities. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. But it's big. It's a big deal. And John Travolta was personally responsible for bringing a lot of people into Scientology in the 70s and 80s because he was promoting it. As long as his career was going great and he was talking about it and stuff, Scientology was completely happy with him. And they got more and more celebrity people involved, right? They have a little group of these guys. Tom Cruise got involved in the 80s through his then wife, Mimi Rogers, who was a second-generation Scientologist. And it helped him with his dyslexia. He was sold on it. And Tom Cruise, being the rather intense personality that he is, he went all in. And he got really heavily involved in Scientology in the 80s. Talked about it a little bit, married Nicole Kidman, and then kind of wavered for a number of years. But then they got him back in the late 90s and got Nicole out of the picture and just focused on Cruise. And they got him back in the fold in a huge way. And he started drumming up business for them again in the early 2000s. And you remember the Matt Lauer interview and jumping on Oprah's couch and meeting Katie and all that nonsense. Well, that was all Scientology inspired. And Tom Cruise was amazing because he could literally mention a Scientology book. He goes on Good Morning America and he says, you want to know about Scientology, just read a book, like Fundamentals of Thought. Go read that book. And he holds it up or something, right? And it looks like this casual thing. And that morning, like 8,000, 10,000 copies of the book get sold. It's like a big deal. Like when celebrities talk, people listen.